Here we go. All right, there we go. We're in now. Now we're live. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. That was funny. I hit go live and then my internet went off. So if that happens again, oh, and hi everybody, if anybody is out there watching. So yeah, we already have technical difficulties. So if I go off, then I'll be back on in a second. So just hang tight. Hang tight. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining tonight. Impromptu live stream. I've got two hobby friends here and really legends, in my opinion. They know their stuff. So I wanted to get them on tonight on short notice. I've got Bobby Burrell and Ryan McClanahan. Guys, thanks very much for joining me on such short notice. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin. Yeah.
All right. So first, what we're going to do is just kind of go through origin story, kind of just learn more about you guys. You guys are really kind of historians, hobby historians, I think, whether it be cards, memorabilia. Bobby, why don't we start with you? Just kind of how you got started and then how is your kind of hobby career taken off?
I guess it started in my first pack openings were 1969. Yes, 1969. First pack I opened.
Bobby's a vampire.
Yeah, so it seems, right? So in 69, I started opening packs. We would walk to the store. Actually, it was the dairy because it was open early. Back in that time period, stores didn't open until like 10 o'clock, variety stores. Go figure. I don't know why. So me and my brother would walk to the store. We'd buy pack because we were given a quarter every day. Wow. Yeah, quarter is not much now today, but and we buy a pack, go to the and the funny part about it is we go to school and we play Noxies and Dropsies with all our friends, but almost half the people collected cards. Half the kids in your class, minus the girls. A few girls did, but people just were into it. It was we didn't have much to do. We didn't have the iPhones. We didn't have much on TV, so that's what we did. So for I don't know, I guess about 5 or 6 years, I kept collecting cards, and then I got into I still collected cards, but I got into comic books, and then I got into toy games as time went on, and starting work and working for about 20 years, then I slowly got back into it again. But I was going to the odd show here and there, and by about 95, I started to make a decision about documenting the things. The reason why is some of the wrappers were in question. What year are they? We didn't know. Was it 65 or 67? And I didn't like going to shows and seeing the dealers there going, I don't know what year it is. It's 65 or 67. Well, it's a big difference between the wrappers in value. So anyways, me and a friend Roger, we got together, wrote a first book and second book in 2003. In 2006 was the second book. First book was 2003. And then the 2015, now I'm working on an app. And I'll sum it up quickly that way.
Okay. And just to clarify, you are a wax expert as far as wax packs and boxes and the vintage wax.
Yeah, when I started getting back into cards heavy, I really got into the wax and display boxes. So I started studying wax. I started studying, and opening the packs. We were opening the packs on at the expos on the weekend, the Toronto Sports Card Expo. So we would open old packs, and you'd get to learn how they were sealed and how they opened. Like in the early days, some of the glassine wax wrappers were actually sealed with a drop of corn syrup. So you almost have to saw through. Yeah, where most people don't know that because glassine doesn't really heat seal, whereas wax does. And some wrappers are glassine, the ones that tear like a cello almost, those type of ones. So
interesting.
A lot of interesting information about wax. But yeah, I consider myself pretty much a wax expert. I can tell pretty good.
Okay. Ryan, before we get to you, I'm just going to say hello to a few people here. We've got Helix Band, which also is Brian, I believe. This is the other account. You're trying to mix it up because I blocked the other 4 accounts. And here you are with your Bucks crap. So yeah, we'll put up with you. Hop Van Dam, good to see you all the way from New Zealand. Raul, AIH, good to see you, man. Oh yeah, all the hanky panky on here tonight. Absolutely. Phoenix Rising 2430. Better not have technical problems again, right? Yeah. And I've got the fiber internet. I've got good internet too. I don't know what the deal is. It just so happens whenever I go live, it goes off, but whatever. AJ from Japan. Yeah. Are you in San Diego yet, or are you still en route? Bazooka Tom, good to see you. What's going on? Oh, okay. I already talked to you, Phoenix. And okay, that's everybody. All right. Ryan, tell us about kind of how did you get into this thing? I know that you've been in the hobby for a while. You are another historian of cards and memorabilia, or mainly cards. But yeah, talk about
mainly cards. So I started. My first memories of opening a pack was in 1982. I was just a little kid, and then maybe 1984 I started collecting in earnest. But by 1990,
82 Tops football. Were you looking for LT rookies?
no, baseball. I was always a
Baseball.
baseball guy.
Yeah.
Um, but like by 1994, when the strike happened, I got so fed up with modern baseball and the players and the owners that I really wanted to uh, continue collecting, but I went into vintage instead. And one of the reasons why is because I got a really bad education in school, and I found that I really wanted to learn more about the players, and my teacher ended up I think in the fourth grade, she took us on a trip to the card store, which is across the street, to get us to learn more about math and problem solving. And I saw all these tobacco cards and 1951 tops, and it kind of like set me off into learning more about the players and the cards. So, I became a writer, and I went into printing as well. I took my college was basically design and printing. So I think that all had to do with uh, sports cards. Yeah, so it's all been really just like a whirlwind ever since.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I did get to hang out with Ryan at the National. He took me around. I met some of his dealer friends. We looked at some vintage stuff. It was definitely a good time. I want to go back to Bobby. We're going to go right into the controversy of the day. But honestly, it's really just kind of, this isn't a brand new thing. This is something that's been going on. We keep hearing about, Logan Paul's, first edition Pokemon boxes. There's 2012 Prism, and we've got 86 Fleer boxes that are in question. For somebody that really kind of understands wax, and I understand that a lot of this is newer stuff. It's not necessarily wax packs, but I mean, what are your thoughts when you see this stuff? Do you think that it's worth trying to authenticate it, or do you think that it's too easy maybe to repack this stuff, or do you think that it's too challenging to really kind of authenticate it, or I don't know how you take the question however you want to. Yeah, take it in any direction you want, but it's just something that seems like it's so common that it's enough of a problem to talk about.
Yeah, sure. With wax, when I started collecting wax, it was mostly the vintage wax, or let's say pre 1990. The newer stuff now and what's going on, it's inevitable. Back then, we expected, I think it was, what was it, 1999? Mike Berry out of the Carolinas, north or south, I can't remember. He was a known sealer of 79 Gretzky packs. And he was out there everywhere, giving packs away to guys who thought it was, he said, oh, it didn't come in a box. It just came the way it is. And I got 800 packs. I don't know what to do with them. It's like, okay, so we all took them in, and sure enough, he resealed them. And the reason why I knew that because he had an iron seal back then. And then he learned and got better and better. But he's slowly been weeded out, and I think he's pretty much gone now. So you're always going to have guys like that, You're always going to have the next guy who's one step ahead. Criminals are always one step ahead. And unfortunately, you can't stop that. But wax is not for the faint of heart. You have to walk in knowing what you're getting into. There is a risk. When you buy a PSA card, it's the card, it's there. But the wax, but the wax has exceeded its pull value at this point, I think. For what you would pull, you'd have to get a PSA 10 and everything just to get your money back for it. But the wax pack is like a double collectible. It's the collectible within the collectible. So, it's
Right.
the pack, it's the artwork sealed, and then it's the cards that are inside, the potential thereof. So what do I see going forward? I think they could wrap them a little better, put a few more, safety tags or whatever they do for wrapping going forward. Yeah, I think that's something they have to do. Maybe code it, number it. I don't know.
What's your take on, if you have high dollar sealed wax? I mean, if there was some sort of technology to be able to look at, infrared or something to be able to see inside of it, or some, I mean, do you think that it reaches a point where it's too risky to where it should be open to verify it? And maybe the hobby just accepts that that stuff can't be sealed that way to authenticate properly? Or do you think that just kind of ruins the whole idea of it? And, just got to take the risk. If you think it's, you know, worthwhile sealed, you keep it sealed.
Are you talking modern or are you talking vintage or both?
I'm talking more vintage, I would say.
With
Probably the
vintage,
pre-1990s stuff, like you mentioned.
you can see through a lot of the packs in vintage. You can see a lot of packs have been tampered with because they're trying to push down to see if they can read the, you know, the player position or even the back of the card, that if it is facing up or down, which doesn't really matter. And you know, I have a 1976 video of the O-Pee-Chee company where they're sealing the packs, the hockey packs, and then they're sliding down. And it's really interesting, but it gave me a good insight to what happens and what goes on in that instance. So yeah, packs are easy to see through in the front and back, but if you wanted to know what was in there with that, I don't think there's any technology that could, because if you could see through it, you'd have to go through 7, 10, 15 cards. It would be all muddled. I can't see. Well, I don't think the technology is there that we could individually get down per card. But is that something?
Almost like the airport when they take your bag through, you know, some sort of X-ray thing that could see inside of it. But I think that would be really tricky because usually they've got it repacked with other cards or whatever. So if it was going through some sort of X-ray machine, it would just see cards in there. So, you know, unless you could really tell that something's off, I don't know. But yeah, it's just interesting because there's so much money in all that stuff, you know, and it only seems like it's become more and more over the last few years. What's your take on it, Ryan? Are you like just sealed boxes and packs and all that stuff?
Yeah. So, you know, the funny thing is I never missed a beat in the hobby except for modern stuff after 94. But I do distinctly remember that you could basically open up the pack, and then I knew that the dealers would take out the good cards and shove old cards in, and then they'd resell them. And that used to happen to the dealer that I used to deal with. And we found a football card in one of the baseball packs, and that was the end of him. But you know, I kind of think that you know, with all that going on in the 1980s and especially in the 1990s, that Upper Deck, that's one of the reasons why Upper Deck came out with that foil pack. And I thought that was kind of the end of it. Apparently, that's not the case. And so, you know, when I was at the National, I was really surprised about a lot of the boxes that were going for like 2,000. I think I even saw a few that are $150,000. And the economics on that, they don't make any sense whatsoever, because you're not going to get your money back on that. The only one who's going to make out on that is not the collector, but it's going to be the person that is selling. And I'm not even sure that the manufacturer is going to be making that kind of money either. So the one who really kind of is a loser in all of this is the one who's selling or buying the boxes for $2,000. So
yeah, they had a box of exquisite 2003 exquisite with the LeBron rookies that was $1 million. Somebody told me for the box. Like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, you know, where there's money, there is fraud, and you have to, like, this is why you have to do your homework. You have to do your research on this stuff. But even if you do that, there, like, you know, Bobby was saying, I think that there's always going to be a better mousetrap or a better mouse to get around the trap, you know. So
I want to ask you this, Bobby, kind of shifting gears a little bit, because when I was at the National, I talked about it in the video, but there was definitely a distinction between the breaker pavilion, where there was all of the excitement and all the yelling and all the pulls and everything, and the breaks. And then you had the vintage dealers that were just kind of doing their thing. And it was like two different worlds colliding. Is it the same way when you go to like Toronto Expo or some of the big Canadian shows? Do they also have, you know, the big breakers, or is that more of a US thing?
It is more of a U.S. thing. I would say most of the dealers there, although there's a lot more new cards of late, it's mostly the same set of guys setting up vintage, new, modern, whatever. They're all selling basically the same stuff. The breaker pavilion thing isn't really a thing here yet, although everything that happens within the U.S. comes to Canada. It just usually takes time. Like Tops, and you know, they make it up here in Canada a year later, usually with certain issues in non-sports and what have you. But yeah, it's quite quiet at the expo. It's the hype. You know, one part of it is sort of the card investor, and then there's the hobbyist on the other side. So you have two opposing sides here. You have the people in the middle, of course. You know, either you're one or the other. And the hobbyist is not hyped. He's happy within to find something new. But these people are looking. It's very much a form of gambling. You know, it is, and it's an investment. And people say, "Well, I'm an astute investor," and I'm saying, "You're an astute gambler. You're not an investor." There's
Yeah.
every investor out there is just speculating, and you're always speculating on what's going to go up, what's going to go down. If anybody could have called this 2000 thing, good for you. I just nobody's seen it coming. But it's just like the 91 explosion too of 1990. Very similar,
Now,
except the dollar value added 5 more zeros.
right. Yeah. No, absolutely. So, and I remember I watched videos of people going to, I think it was the Toronto Expo. Are there certain shows that are outside of hockey in Canada, or is it just so dominant in Canada that it's hockey cards and that's really what it's about? And not to say there's not other things at these shows, but is it just dominant by hockey?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, hockey is basically everything up here. It's
How
so
come?
cold in most parts of Canada that you can only skate. So hockey is the main thing, right?
But how come? I mean, I know that Canadians collect baseball cards and they,
Mhm.
they watch American football and stuff, but the card part just had never caught on really in a big way.
The O-Pee-Chee cards, they were here. There was baseball collectors. It's just not dominated too much. We didn't have a really Toronto team until 1977. We did have one way back, obviously in the turn of the century and what have you. We had and then the Toronto Maple Leafs, which actually the Toronto Maple Leaf baseball team, the hockey team, was named after the Toronto Maple Leaf baseball team, actually in 1930s, 31, I think it was. Anyways, that's just a little history. But yeah, it's dominated with hockey. More and more basketball and baseball and football are coming into the shows. We're getting a whole group of new dealers coming in, and it's nice. I like the diversity of it. Sure.
Tony has a question here. I think he means 79 O-Pee-Chee cases, maybe. Would you guys know if a Gretzky rookie cases exist? Just wondering. Is that something that's at auction? Have you seen where there's a case of 79 tops or 79 O-Pee-Chee that's out there that's, that people are spending millions of dollars on probably? Have you seen anything like that at the big auction sites? Has Ken Golden taken that to Manhattan yet?
There is cases out there, though.
Yeah. And actually, Bobby, that's it. Because you do, I mean, you've done a lot of kind of, digging around over the years. Do you know are collectors hoarding that stuff to where it's not necessarily out in the spotlight, that of? Obviously you're not naming names, but just people that have that stuff that they're like, hey, I'm not, I don't care about the money. I'm just holding on to it. I've had it forever.
The thing that happens, to be straight with you, a lot of that wax goes into the rich people's hands, so to speak. It's already spoken for. If it ever comes around, it's usually allocated right away. And we're talking 50,000, 100,000, 500,000, stuff like that. Any old vintage wax like that goes directly to somebody. It rarely does it come up. The last time it came up, was 2005 Master Auction, when the O-Pee-Chee, when Gary Kareen, who was the owner of O-Pee-Chee, he put his whole archive into that auction, and it was phenomenal. I did win some, so I was happy.
So are you saying that it's done between collectors, or you kind of everyone knows each other, so if they were going to move something,
small world. Yeah.
So private sales, and that sort of thing.
You have big collectors. You have the Steinbrenner, you have Oberman. You have a lot of big guys out there who are big wax collectors and card collectors. So, and that's no secret.
Yeah. I always wonder about that, kind of with that, which card was it? Was it the Wagner that just went for 7.5 million? The private sale. And I always wonder, like, how many private sales happen that we never know about, that are probably
thousands.
There's probably huge sales that are more than $7 million that we just have no clue of.
Yeah.
It has to have, or trades, like instead of it like cash exchanging hands, it's like, here's this card for whatever else, your yacht or whatever,
It's all behind the scenes is what, and a lot of these guys know each other anyway, and they trade, or they sell between each other, and we never know about it because we're the little fishes in the pond.
The odds.
So, yeah, and so like 9 times out of 10, a lot of these guys too, the multimillionaires, they don't want to share their collection with anybody else. They don't even want to know or have people know that they do have a card collection, and for obvious reasons too, because this stuff is worth millions of dollars potentially, and that could the more people know about that stuff, that the more they can be taken advantage of as well. And
So you're saying, Ryan, that they're not on Instagram posting their cards every day with the
no, I actually I know a few of these guys, and so they're very quiet. They're very secret of their collections.
I think
And they'll just tell a certain a group of people that can keep their mouth shut about it.
yeah, we try to disclose as little as possible to other people. It's a small group of people. I'm sort of being a historian. You get kind of included in some other things. People ask you advice or what have you, and you do get to know a little bit extra what's going on out there. But disclosure is everything. And there's a lot of deals that are going on behind closed doors. Yeah, and
and one of the things about me being a investigative journalist is that I talk to a lot of these people off the record, and so it stays between us, whatever conversations that we have, and that's also why I'm able to continue as a reporter, because I don't share a lot of stuff that is generally off the record.
Yeah, I appreciate you not sharing about my Josh Rosen rookie cards, Ryan.
It's yeah.
It's out now.
It's all the Rosens and the Will Greers and the Ryan Finleys. Damn it.
Well, with being a collector, I always say it's not about not being able to afford it. It's about the opportunity. And people come to you and they say, Bobby, I don't care. I just like the opportunity. If I would be the first person you would contact if you find this. Yeah. So I have 5 guys who would say the same thing to you. Then what do you do at that point? It's who you like the most, or who, whatever. It's just who you think is more deserving. I don't know. Because the money's there regardless. It's just a matter of choosing the person. And I'm the same way. I want opportunity first. So regardless of your price, if you're overpriced, that's fine. There's a lot of things I'll overpay for because I know the rarity. I'm more into rarity than anything else.
Yeah. Now, are you doing a lot of, when you're hunting, searching, is it estate sales and things like what, in the US, that's kind of a lot of, you see a lot of things passed down through estate sales. But I do think, and kind of along the lines of what you're talking about, I think there's probably a lot of things that don't make it to the estate sale if it is a rare item or whatever. So the more contacts you have, you probably get linked into things that never make it to a public auction or whatever. Is that, how do you typically, you don't have to tell all your secrets, but how do you normally find these things? Or, are you on the beach with a metal detector? How are you finding it?
Not quite. Again, it's opportunity. For me, finding stuff is rather easy. When you know more than most people out there, you can find things that are just hidden gems. One of my recent pickups that I think I showed on Instagram there was the 1933 C.A. Briggs multi-sport set of 31 cards. I just picked up the hockey card. I've seen one in 2003 or 4 sold on eBay for $800. We didn't know what it was. Nobody knew, even in the US. And I'm sitting there going, really? Even you guys don't know? And this is the second one that I've ever seen, and I finally got it. I got it for a really good deal because nobody really knew that it was only 2 known and how rare it really is. And there's a Babe Ruth in there as well. You probably know about this, Ryan, correct? Yeah. So, I was so happy, and I wanted the marbles card. I don't know why. It's a game, it's obviously a sport. They were playing marbles and they had 2 guys who went against it. I just really love the non-sport side of things. I think that's my second love of beyond hockey.
Is that more of a history buff thing? Kind of that non-sports, is it more of the history of of that, thing, or, what draws you to that, you think?
Rarity, history. Yeah, certainly history. I get into the companies and I go deep on the companies, like all the Canadian chocolate companies of the 20s. I know most of the companies. I know their whole backstory and what have you. And I really like the 20s. It was a very different era. We went from tobacco in the 1910s, and then the 20s, it's all chocolate. And then all in 1933, for some weird reason, 5 gum companies come out with cards. Plus in the US too, like what happened? And everyone goes, well, I think it was a salesman or the printer, rather than the gum company coming up with the idea. 5 gum companies at the same time coming with the same idea. I doubt it. It would have to be a printer going around going, hey, listen, your competition, they're doing cards. How about you guys do cards? But then the licensing started to drag in there, and then things got a little complicated.
That's interesting. What's your take on that, Ryan?
Yeah, so I was a little bit different
Yeah.
you know, here, in the United States and in Massachusetts, so where I'm from, you have a lot of a lot of chewing gum companies as well in the 1930s. I think 5 of them, especially Gowdy, and then Gowdy had their own company up in Canada as well, and their own, I think, printing company.
Worldwide Gum, it was called. Yeah.
Yeah. But so like, I don't know how it is in Canada, but we have the copyright laws in the 1909 Copyright Act, and so a lot of the companies had to follow the legislation in order to get their licenses. But that's, yeah, so licensing and all that, and the players, in fact, and a lot of those players were actually um, uh, they had like one person, which was Babe Ruth's manager, and so they all kind of shared the same manager, and each company, like they had to go through the manager in order to get the rights to the player, and that could be a problem too, and so that's mostly why. That's half of why the cards from the 1930s are rare. But if you want to know why the other half of the 1930s cards are rare, is because of obviously the Great Depression, and that the economics of that go back to World War One. So you can just it's kind of like connecting the dots, and sometimes it's not easy to do that.
The paper drives they had.
Yeah. But again, Canada's got a great history on sports cards and non-sports cards too, and I wish I kind of dove more into that. I'm still trying to figure some of that stuff out. It's different. It's different from American cards. So
KSA is a grading company in Canada, right? That's what D Team is referring to. So let's just go ahead and dive into that, Bobby. Are you aware? Do you use KSA? What's the story with KSA in Canada?
My friend Nathan, he owns KSA. KSA is a Canadian company that it's kind of hard to say. I don't want to say anything. If you don't have anything, why don't we just say KSA? Yes, they are a grading company in Canada. Are they respected? Yes, to a degree.
Okay. So it depends depends on who you're talking to.
To a degree.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Leave it at that.
Oh, yeah. Hobby Champs. How's your Jacob Eason investments coming along? I didn't get into Jacob Eason, fortunately or unfortunately. Who knows? Maybe he'll make a comeback. You never know, guys. You never know. The quarterback carousel. You never do know. Feel free to throw questions in the chat for these guys. Obviously, they've got longtime knowledge. So if you have any vintage style questions, throw them in the chat. Let's pivot a little bit to the current state of things. Obviously, the last 3 years has been kind of wild compared to, I think, where cards have been, and really memorabilia. I would say I'd probably lump that in with it. What is your overall take as far as, where we are right this second? Are you still kind of doing your thing? Are you happy, or are the things you don't really like? I mean, where are you at, Ryan? Let's start with you.
So I'm actually very happy with my own collection and what I've been able to pick up over the last couple of years, because I'm not really paying a whole lot. What collector really wants to pay a whole lot for their cards? If you're into investment, that's completely different. If you're into modern, it's completely different too. I'm primarily vintage, so I am really kind of shocked at some of the prices that I've seen for a lot, especially vintage, over the last 2 or 3 years, because my hobby memory goes back so long that when I was a teenager and in my early 20s collecting these cards, I wasn't really paying a lot for them, and I've always felt that my dollar was going farther too. And so some of the cards I've been able to pick up uh, over the last, I don't know, 20 years, they're they're really not affordable these days. And I found that out firsthand at the National too. Some of especially like the 56 tops mantle, and maybe the 41 play ball Ted Williams. And you could pick up those cards and still leave the show with some money at the end of the day. Uh, Today, when I was at the National, I picked up a 41 play ball Ted Williams, 1.5 for a grand, and it really I didn't really have any buyer's remorse because it wasn't for me, but you know, it was still kind of shocking that some of the stuff is uh, happening, and I was recently reminded too that the the prices for a lot of these cards is what the market will bear, and with the economy, I've mentioned this on my own videos, but it seems to me that every time that there was either a Great Depression or a disturbance in the economy, say, World War II or the Great Depression, you would expect that the hobby would falter or kind of go down with collectors, and instead, we actually see the exact opposite happen. So in like World War II, when a lot of your service members who are collecting cards, they actually started uh, picking up and cards here and there, and the hobby actually skyrocketed. It spiked, and that was one thing that Jefferson Burdick actually stated in one of his articles in I think October or December of 1942, and then every time there's a downturn in in the economy, you start to see the hobby start to spike again, or sometimes it just levels out. And this is a very different time too. So we've never really seen this before, and a lot of a lot of things are really kind of inflated, and it's really difficult to figure out what is correct or
Yeah.
what should be correct.
Yeah, it is. I was doing some research yesterday, and what's really odd in the US is we have full employment, but we have negative GDP over 2 quarters, which technically, negative GDP, you're in a recession. But
Yeah,
usually what goes hand in hand with that is job loss and unemployment being elevated, but that's not the case. So it's kind of like we're fully employed, but not productive. It's just an odd, it's never been like that before, so that is kind of
yeah.
that's an
It's
interesting one.
the numbers aren't making sense, and they really aren't. And someone's lying about something. Usually,
I will
and
say,
Mm.
Ryan's like the Splinter from Ninja Turtles of sports cards, because literally, like with vintage cards, he has like 5 different tools on his like to like go. He's got everything to look at, everything, the
yeah,
every pixel.
I got, I got
And
this, and
you
I
and
got,
then he also smelled the cards too. That was another thing that caught me. And I remember like the lady that at the table looked at you like, "What is he doing?" Because you're like smelled the card and you're like, "Yep, it's legit. It's real."
Yeah, that's true, right? 100%. Yeah.
yeah, and I always kind of like when I first heard that, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, and people are like, "What are you doing, guy? Like, are you on drugs?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not on drugs. Although I do have a gram scale here," and and so, no, what will happen is that when you check out the cards, they're gonna leave different like 4 different scents, and it's gonna tell you if it's a modern reproduction or like just the age, and You can do this with a book as well. And so it's something you can't really fake.
So it's the paper.
Yeah, and it happens over time too. I mean,
Okay.
it's we're talking about cardboard, and with modern stuff, you can definitely smell that there's a chemical scent from the resin, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, and
Bobby,
like these have resin too. So, but it's not gonna it's not gonna smell like a
I
new
just thought
card.
that was interesting. I was like, man, that is some like whisperer type stuff.
Yeah.
But Bobby and Ryan, you can tackle this too. But do you know the story with this? With the, I assume what he's talking about is Topps Bowman baseball cards. Why is it 52 Topps Manals over 51 Bowmans? How did Topps kind of win this war, so to speak?
Ryan, if you want to take that one, and I want to add
Sure.
something at the end of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
So I've written quite extensively about this, and I've researched and so the Cliff Notes version of this is that Topps and Bowman, it's all about contracts of players. But what was happening, this went on from like 1948 through 1953. What was happening is that you had players that were signing multiple contracts, and actually the Federal Trade Commission got in on this too in like 1962, and they wrote a pretty decent report on this. But both companies really depended on the contracts to get new players. But like Topps, just they eventually took over Bowman, and Bowman was they printed or they produced too many products, which is one of the reasons why they kind of went under. And then they had a series of financial, I guess, mistakes. And Warren Bowman had actually resigned, or he went on to a different project in 1952. So by the time 1953 rolls around, Bowman is in some serious financial trouble, and they had to sell, and so they'd always be in court, and then this picks up again in like 1975 through like 1985 as well, but it's really all about the contract wars, and that's Topps won out, but in the end, Topps almost went bankrupt too back in 1981 as well. So
Interesting. Bobby, you want to throw something on the back end of that?
Well, Canada's a lot different. I think Warren Bowman got into land in Florida. He bought a bunch of land anyway, so he moved on to that. But he was good friends with George Kennedy, who was the owner of Parker's. Now, when Parker's came in, I can't tell you much really about the 30s, what was going on, but I know in 1951, his deals were for $5,000 per team, and it was done with a handshake. So what happened, they would go to the owners. The owners owned the players, and they would take snapshots. So the owners got everything. And that went on until, guess who came along? Topps. Topps came along and started to give Parker's the rough time, saying, hey, listen, we'll pay $15,000. And then Parker's had, oh my God, that's why we had the split between Topps and Parker's, where Topps had the American teams and Parker's had the two Canadian teams. So we have two products of hockey going on, from 1954 to 63, and it's all through the contract. So George Kennedy opted to pay $30,000 to have the two Canadian teams, and which had the greatest players, which was really great. And the Topps ended up with the four American teams. And then somewhere in 1960, 61, we stole the Detroit Red Wings somehow from Topps. So, really interesting story. And I think then it got into player contracts as it went along, and the NHLPA, like the MLBPA, they all came in and they started to group together and organize themselves. And that's when they really started to get into players, because otherwise players would go do something for a beehive and, oh, here's some syrup, thanks. Here's a case of syrup. Oh, really? And then you'd go back, and then probably the owner of the team would sit there and say, hey, I'll take half of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's totally different. But things are all kind of the same now, obviously.
Yeah. You know, if I could just kind of chime in on that too, and bounce off that, I've noticed there's a lot. Tops is doing business with other countries besides Canada too, and I knew the Canadian part, but I didn't know that they were also in Great Britain as well, and they were also in Venezuela. The Great Britain thing kind of is very interesting to me because they're taking uh, like what would be like normal tops cards or the designs, and they're giving them to like I it was A, B, and C gum.
A, B, and C was the kind of part.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in
and so
disguise, incognito.
and so so like I'm really curious about how that actually happened, and there's also like cricket cards too that they're coming up with, and I want to say too that they're also doing business in Australia, but they haven't really been able to prove that in other places. So that's really kind of also how Topps got the upper hand too on Bowman too.
While we're on the topic of manufacturers, why don't we just kind of dive into really the most well-funded manufacturer, Fanatics, is now taking over. We don't have to worry as much about them struggling with going out of business, at least not for a while anyway. I guess they could, blow it up or whatever, but not that it really means a whole lot to you guys because it's a lot of modern stuff that you're probably not interested in anyway. But I'm kind of speaking out of turn there, but I'm assuming that. Do you think though that it brings people in to where eventually you just have kind of enough eyeballs on all the stuff to where it trickles down? Because that is a lot of what happens. I mean, you'll see people come in for one reason or another, and then they'll start digging deep into other things, vintage or whatever it is. I mean, what's your take, just Fanatics in general, with that?
Monopoly. That's all.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing. They own too much. And with too much power comes possible corruption. I don't know what's going to happen. I think everybody has good intents. The third parties are really making all the money in this hobby. Nobody else is making anything close to the third parties.
Yeah.
I haven't graded a card with PSA since 2003.
Now, when you say third parties, you mean like the PSAs, the grading companies,
investing, you name it, all all of those things. The third parties are really coming in to take over everybody's dollars. It's no longer a hobby for fun. If you actually look up the definition of hobby, it's something you do in your leisure for pleasure. There's money involved, yes, to a degree, but now this is total one of one collector stuff. It's just right there. It's like the Franklin Mint. I bought an Excalibur ring in 1980 something, and they said it was limited and it'd be worth tons later. What's it worth now? Nothing.
Yeah, I think that with Fanatics, you have to really kind of watch out how many businesses that they're actually taking over, and I would kind of assume that the Federal Trade Commission would want to get in on this and find out whether or not that everything is above board. And we've seen this in the hobby before with Topps and then with the American Tobacco Company, prior to 1911. And it never turns out well for the collector, for the most part, and that's my concern. Is business overreach. And when I was at the National, I really kind of felt a little uncomfortable with the corporate side of things, and I wasn't the only one either. I was trying to do business with a really nice couple from Iowa who had a lot of great vintage basketball, and the guy he got so fed up. The dealer got so fed up because the breaker was so loud that he asked me. He's like, "Hey, can you go over there and tell the guy to shut up?" And I was getting a little annoyed, but I think the hobby is getting a little too corporate right now. And this is a conversation that Buck Barker had back in 1962 as well, and he asked pretty much the same question, like, is the hobby too corporate? And corporations, they're fine, but at the same time, we're seeing a lot of people on Wall Street get in on the hobby, and a lot of those people really don't know what they're doing within, when it comes to like buying and selling cards or NFTs. And I'm not really one to know a whole lot about NFTs, but if I read up on something and I try to understand it, but if I still don't understand it, then I'm not going to participate in it. And this is really where people have to like do their homework as well. And I'm not sure if that's happening.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less concerned about business coming in. The one thing though that I'm a little to a lot concerned about is it becoming more and more a sports betting operation.
Yeah.
Because as you said, it's breaking is really just an extension of sports betting, except you on the other end of it, instead of making a bet on a team or whatever, a line, you at least you have cards at the end of it, maybe, if you win out on that break. And so, if people are just, and look, I mean, a lot of people just have fun. They go, that's why Vegas is so busy. That's why Atlantic City is so busy. People know they're going to go in and lose money and they enjoy just the gambling part. So that's fine. But, that's such it's a different world than kind of like where you guys are operating. And it's not to say one is better than the other, but I just think if the sports betting side becomes the dominant corporate presence, I don't really love that.
That could really harm modern cards, and more so obviously than vintage, because the guys who are in vintage are now passed on for the most part, and it's the modern players who have cards and the collectors. They're the ones who could really take the major financial hits, because you don't know what's on the level. We've had back in the 50s and the 1960s, probably up through the 70s, we've had point shaving scandal after point shaving scandal in basketball, and with the states really kind of like lifting their bans on gambling in sports. You really don't know what is now on the level. And when this happened with the 1919 White Sox, the reason why the gamblers went to baseball was because pari-mutuel betting was banned in horse racing from state to state, beginning in 1902 through 1912. And then you also had boxing banned as well in certain states. So this is really something that I think a lot of collectors needed to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take, Bobby? You have anything you want to throw in on there?
So much I'd like to say.
Yeah, and you don't have to get into the weeds on it, but first, do you like to bet? Do you like to play poker or do any of that stuff? I mean, is there, do you do any of that stuff?
Yeah, I'm sort of a gambler. Like, I'd love to have a national in Vegas, so you could go see the shows, go have a nice meal, go to the casino, do a
Right.
lot. It would be a great place, to enjoy yourself. It's not really just about the gambling, but it is a great place to host. It's a perfect place to host, actually. Me myself, the gambling part, I get it, 100%. I get it. The one thing about I have to get back to a question we were talking about before. With hockey, the collectibles and the merchandise and the footage, all that stuff. Prior to 1979, when we went through the 2000 boom, it wasn't effective. From Gretzky up, it was effective, but everything below, all key cards, obviously they went up, not exponentially, but they did go up quite a bit. But it was really a protected place. It was really nice because we didn't see, York peanut butter glasses from the 60s. They didn't go up. They kind of stayed the same. Everything stayed the same. A lot of the collectibles and a lot of the cards stayed the same. Commons didn't go up. Nothing went up really with hockey. So we were kind of insulated, which was kind of good. But then again, we're the fourth sport, maybe the fifth sport at this point now. So it was a little bit insulated, which I kind of liked. But anything from Gretzky up and Bork and all the other rookies and Patrick Waugh and Lemieux, all of those went crazy. Now they settled back down. But, it was insulated prior to that, which I kind of like. But it showed the era of generational gap, because I'm obviously a baby boomer. You said something in your show, but you were a baby boomer. I'm actually at the very beginning, the end of the baby boomer. So I'm really hitting it at being born in 1964. So your generation, I think, is that part of that there of where people really started to look back and look forward too, into the collecting and the gambling and all the other stuff. It's just a moving forward thing.
Yeah, heavy speculation. Yeah, I'm the Gandalf of millennials. I'm like the old. I was born in 81, so I'm like right on the edge. I think millennial starts at like 80, or maybe it's even 81. I'm like the last year before Gen X. I'm like right in between the Gen X and the millennials, or
So
maybe
we got three different generations right here. Just on
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Gen X. So,
I don't want to be a baby boomer, guys. I'm 20 up here still.
yeah, your mind never ages, but your body does.
Yeah, a little bit, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right,
But
let's
that's-
go to like personal collection. What because we'll probably wrap a little over an hour. We're at 50 minutes. What is your favorite set? This is gonna be hard, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot. I'll start with you, Ryan. What is your favorite set? Or you can pick a couple of sets, where you've got cards in it. You don't have to pick one card. You can pick one card if you want, but what's just a great set that you're number one, number two, 1A, 1B?
Yeah, that's like I mean, if I had kids, that's like trying to say like, what's your favorite kid, right? So that's really tough. But I my favorite set has really always been the 1911 T205, and followed by the T207, and then I would say right now maybe there's a cricket set from 1934 which I absolutely love, and it's the John Players cricketers, and I just got into cricket last year because it's fun, it's cheap, and you don't have to worry about a lot of the stuff you have to do in baseball, and I've gotten into like soccer and tennis and golf and all this other great stuff, that's not baseball related, because you can get kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say bored out of from baseball, but you want to kind of like expand your horizons. So, but that's a really tough question, but I'm glad you asked it.
Canada's a real,
Yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
yeah, I'll just respond to Ryan there. Canada's a real stomping ground because, we had players, we had Wills, all the people that came from England, Canada. There's a huge influx of people that were English, Irish, Scottish. I'm Scottish myself. That came to Canada, and all those cigarette brands are all here, and all those non-sports cards are in Canada. It's really kind of interesting. So you're talking about that. It's just like I see them all the time. I just kind of, some of them are interesting for sure, but I think that 1922 England established the Cardophilium group collecting of documenting cards as early as 1922.
Yeah.
And we here, I don't even know when we really even started. There's just guys like me and you, and that's what's that?
1935 was when Burdick started, but it didn't really
Jefferson,
it didn't really take off until maybe 10 years after that, and even like back in the 1970s or 1980s is when you start seeing the hobby really start to shoot up.
Yeah, for sure.
Bobby, do you have any collections of stuff that's not, kind of unique things that you collect that are just, people wouldn't know about, or, what's kind of a unique collectible that you've dove into over the years?
I'll tell you something that's really interesting is my collecting is more based on non-possessional at this point. I would rather have an advertisement I haven't seen, or figure out a document that tells me a little bit more about the company and the history of the cards or what have you. So I don't need to own it. The possessional part is kind of gone now, and it's kind of good. But I do pick up stuff. Like I said, I try to find what's rare, because it's not the kill, it's the thrill of the chase, and I really enjoy the thrill of the chase. Information is my biggest thing. I'm really key on that. If I won $1 million, what would I buy? It's like, I don't know if I even buy much, because you can just buy it. All these multimillionaires, they can just buy everything. I see the Logo Man. When the Logo Man was sold, I said, the Logo Man sold for what an individual jersey, all three of them, would sell for. And I can't comprehend that in reality. I'm saying, well, you put it on a card, you took it off a jersey. That jersey is historic, and you kind of cut it apart, which is fine and fair. You can do whatever you want. You can burn whatever you have, you can burn it. do what you want with it. It's up to you. It's yours. That's a possessional part of it. But when that happened, that turns me off into the sense of, I don't have to own that stuff. Anybody wants to, that's fine. At that point, we're into that, sense of investing, gambling, whatever you want to call it, and that's fine. You can do it. It's free to do.
It's
And
crazy to me that, I mean, because really we're kind of in manufactured scarcity on steroids now, but to see it on the high end like that is amazing. Because it's one thing, like the manufactured scarcity thing, that's not new. That's been going on for 30 plus years. You could probably argue going back to the 80s, that's when really kind of mass consumption, really started grinding. But, now you can literally, I mean, the thought that Panini or one of these companies can come up with, a card, and granted, very, very cool card, but then it can be promoted, marketed, and sell for a couple $1,000,000. And they literally just created it out of, like what you're saying. I mean, and it's a very cool card, but like you said, I mean, those jerseys, I mean, and the other part that gets me too is it's not as if, there was 3 different jerseys from the season that he played. It would be one thing if it was like, this is from the game 7 jersey, you have like some story behind it, but it's just like 3 patches of a jersey during that season. That just seems insane to me. Is that even, I mean, and that's a couple $1,000,000. I don't know.
It's surprising how much hobby time is really spent on those cards, which are really the 0.0001 percenters.
Yeah.
And the hobby is always talking about that, where there's so much other stuff that's good that would be great content that Brian would share. There's other collectors out there, and it doesn't get the hits.
Yeah.
That doesn't get the hits because it's not the rah rah sis boom bah kind of stuff. I understand, and that's just the way the hobby is now. And I don't call it the hobby. I think it's the market. But I think the hobby is the stuff that you pursue and you like personally. And if it got burned in a fire, you wouldn't be mad because you lost money. You'd be mad because you lost the card. And I think that's the dividing point between a lot of people. When they stopped taking gum, when they took the gum out of cards, it was over for me. And that was 1991, I think.
Yeah.
And at that point, because it stopped being for kids. Remember, the cards and the gum, they were selling gum and they made the packaging bigger so they could add card to sell the gum. It wasn't the card selling the gum, it was the gum selling cards. Things have, obviously it changed in the 30s and what have you, but as we got to that point, we're way past that point now. So
yeah, the funny thing is for us it's a hobby, but for like the manufacturers it wasn't. It was, especially in England and in Great Britain, it was deadly serious. And they took this stuff very seriously. Everything from like who was on the card to basically what was represented on it, because in England and Great Britain, they weren't just selling tobacco or cards that came with it. They were educating their workforce as well. And for here it's a lot different as well. And there's a lot of, I think, with the manufacturers, or they also know each other as well, including today. But you have to, you can look at like I say Gordon Gowdy and his treasurer founded a company, D Long, and so all these guys knew each other and they were all starting companies, and so that's the same thing that's going on today as well. As just we don't kind of realize this. We think that everything is new today, but it isn't. It's just packaged in a different form and shipped out to the consumer without them ever realizing what the hobby history is. A lot of hobby history is not really told today. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of these new collectors think that, oh, it's brand new, it's awesome, it's great. Oh, wait a minute, it was done before, like and so it's a lot of the hobby history, like I said, is really hasn't been taught. And that's I don't get a lot of views on my channel, and that's fine. But at least my information is out there for anybody who wants to partake in it. and I don't know everything about vintage, and I don't know everything about modern either. But that's why I'm in this, so I can learn. And I've learned a lot from Dustin over the past year or so as well. With
I don't know about that, but
I know I really have, because I I don't know a lot about modern stuff, and I want to kind of seek out new people with new, fresh ideas that I might not have. So, and I know I kind of do the same thing, but with people as well.
Dustin give us great information on the bite-sized gulps, which is great. It's a nice little piece here and there, and it just because you can't take it all in at once. But
It's
we've
very tough.
evolved with it to a certain degree, but our mindset is a little different than those of the modern people. So it's nice to be in the loop, so to speak,
Yeah.
in the information side of it, and that's why I'm doing that, and that's why I'm on Because I'm Carlos, and I do that show just to stay in the loop. How much time do we spend talking vintage? Very little. But I'm
yeah,
there.
yeah.
I'm
No,
the
no.
official. I'm the official, non-official, the unofficial co-host of the show. Whatever I am there. So I just show up and I'm on. So
No, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Ryan, because your blog is insane. I love, you're a great writer. And you have a great YouTube channel as well, but your writing is fantastic. Where can
Thanks.
people find, what's the website for the blog and then also the YouTube channel?
All right, so it's historythroughcards.com, and I write long form articles, which are really long. Some of my articles are about 60 pages. Um, and yeah, and
Serious business. Yeah.
yeah, and I get into everything. I put the refrigerator and the kitchen sink in too, and so
I love it. I love it though.
But
and
what I like to, and keep going, hold that thought, but you tie in kind of U.S. history with what's going on with cards.
yeah.
I love that part. Anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I try to tie in everything that's in with the card, and just for example, John Sherman is the reason why we have tobacco cards in the first place, but he's also the reason why tobacco cards ceased to exist after 1913, really, in the United States. So a lot of it is like legislation, science, art, and me being a professional artist as well. It's there's a lot to this stuff, and it's kind of like an onion. When you peel the onion away, you have another layer, and that's a lot like what is going on with our sports cards as well. And so anything I can find and kind of bring to light, because I also want to know about this stuff as well, and not just the ball players. Who we might not think of, who kind of like pass through time. A lot of this stuff has really not been brought to light in 90 to 100 plus years too. So I'm also on YouTube as well, and it's History Through Cards Shortcut.
Perfect. All right, Bobby, how can people find you as well?
Well, I'm basically on Facebook. I have a small group that actually I have 1,700 members, and there
That's
are
a lot.
no mainstream cards allowed.
Interesting. Okay.
It's all collectible. Yeah, food issues allowed there, certain other things, but it's mostly yeah, jerseys, pieces of memorabilia, mostly the collectibles like the merchandise that was available in the stores or the souvenir booths.
What about Masters of the Universe? Can I throw pics of that in the group?
You can't go past 1990 as
Oh,
well.
this is 80. This is 82.
Yeah, but it's not hockey.
Oh, it's got to be hockey. So if Mossman had a hockey stick,
So
you know what?
17
Casey Jones. I'll bring my Casey Jones figure from Ninja Turtles. There we go.
Okay, that's still not hockey, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So 1,700 members and no hockey cards, because the hockey blogs on Facebook are, look at my Gretzky 9, look at my Gretzky 8, look at my
Oh,
Gretzky
it's no
7.
hockey. That's what you're
No
saying.
hockey. No,
Oh, got it.
it's all hockey. No hockey cards. No mainstream. No Parker Stops. No nothing.
Got it.
And I run a tight ship, and we have a lot of members, and we learn there. We post things, and people answer questions, and I let everybody in. I check everybody's profile before they come into the group, before I let them in. So I'm keeping it very structured to the information side of it, and we have a good group of people, and I learn a lot of stuff there too. I answered a lot of the questions, but I mean, I learn from other people too, and they post lots of great information. So I'm trying to, and that's where you can get a hold of me. I'm Bobby VHC, Bobby Vintage Hockey Collector, and and Instagram at Bobby VHC, and that's about it.
And then Bobby is also on the Because I'm Carlos YouTube channel, typically Friday nights, right? That's the Friday night live stream.
Yep.
So you'll find him there as well.
Yep.
All right, guys. Let me just say hi and bye real quick. Eric S., Mike Petty, my vintage guy, pickleball cards. Mike's always talking trash about modern stuff. So thanks for joining. Dex Flow, good to see you. Pro AR13, Bill Verge's video captures. Brett, good to see you. All right, guys, we will see you again next time. Yeah, Bobby Ryan, stay on, backstage, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks again.
Thanks.